if you asked me that question a couple of years ago, I would say less than 5% of the people calling us to use the agency to buy property had any understanding of crypto and Bitcoin, and they own nothing. Now I would say it's probably 20 to 30% of people we speak to all have Bitcoin in their portfolios. I'm still in the camp that within the next 6 months, we're going to see some sort of a top, and then after that, we do have a slowdown. But what could change that is obviously interest rates and how they're cutting and liquidity is going up.
Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Tapping Into Crypto. I'm joined by Ravi Sharma from Personal Finance with Ravi. Ravi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, mate. So you've made the trip up from Sydney, so we're very appreciative. I feel like, being in the studio is always, just a bit of a better vibe. So
the chemistry's different when you're in person.
That's it. And also we're missing Pav today, so we'll see how we go. But thanks for filling in.
That's all good, man.
Now listen, Ravi, so it's probably safe to say you're not a total crypto native, but through your YouTube channel and through your other businesses, you've got some really interesting insights on crypto and how it fits into a balanced portfolio. Obviously, like your expertise is personal finance, but you also own a buyer's agent business. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in investing in personal finance and how it's come to you coming on a crypto show?
Yeah. I'm a real estate guy.
Yeah.
So for me, I started 21, bought my first house. It was an investment property for like $200K. And I thought, okay, so I just need like 10 of these and then I can retire by the time I'm 30 and then I can do whatever I like.
It's that easy.
Yeah. It's so simple. And then what I realized after a couple of properties that, you have things like borrowing capacity. The banks aren't going to lend you money and this and that. And so you realize, okay, maybe I need to find something I'm passionate about because maybe I'm not going to retire by 30.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do at 30? Everyone else is going to be working, so you're going to get bored. So in amongst all of that, I realized that I'm actually really passionate about property, really passionate about helping people. So those two worlds collided. I was doing property conveyancing, which was a little dry. So that's like property law.
Yep.
Then I did mortgage broking, and then I ended up starting up a buyer's agency. And so having bought property pretty much in through all of my 20s, I realized, okay, I can help a lot more people by actually setting up a buyer's agency. But in amongst all that, I obviously set up the YouTube channel and I was talking about, not just real estate, but finance in general. And in amongst that, I ended up obviously investing into crypto. And I say crypto, not Bitcoin, because everyone starts with the altcoins.
Yeah, of course.
So 2018 absolutely got wrecked.
Yeah.
And I realized, okay, maybe I'm stupid or this market is a Ponzi. So I had to go through a couple of those stages before I realized that, okay, Bitcoin is actually a big part of my portfolio now, and moving forward, it still will be.
Yeah, nice. And mate, I totally relate on how you said, property law can be boring and conveyancing, because my long-term girlfriend is a conveyancing lawyer, and
Nice.
I have to hear about it every night, and I still don't understand it, but I pretend I do. So I can relate there. Yeah, no, listen, so you've obviously got the Bitcoin in your portfolio, but you're more of a real estate guy. So as part of the buyer's agency and you're talking to clients, is it tough for them to sometimes understand, how Bitcoin fits into, a diversified portfolio? Like, do they still not see it as that tangible, real asset? Not just as part of the buyer's agency, but obviously your YouTube channel and your audience as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you asked me that question a couple of years ago, I would say less than 5% of the people calling us to use the agency to buy property had any understanding of crypto and Bitcoin, and they own nothing. Now I would say it's probably 20 to 30% of people we speak to all have Bitcoin in their portfolios, which is pretty incredible. But they are more real estate focused. So it's more so going for them, hey, I want real estate to be the foundation. And I think that's largely driven by how I talk about it as well, is my foundation's in real estate. But then I want to go and build out and diversify against the traditional finance world. So that's where Bitcoin comes in. And so it has definitely changed over the last couple of years. And people are starting to understand that there might be something happening here. And the one thing I say is, look, I'm not the smartest person in the room. When there's people a lot smarter than me actually believe in this, and there's governments adopting it, and there's a lot more happening, especially with Bitcoin. It's by you not investing into it, you're taking a bet against it. And so that's how I think about, crypto or Bitcoin in general. And then I think about that with real estate. And so day in, day out, I think about real estate, but I'm thinking a lot more personally as well around Bitcoin and how much I allocate and how does it make up the portfolio for the modern day investor.
Yeah. I can tell you right now, you are the smartest person in this room, if that means anything. But what's your approach to Bitcoin investing? Do you take the the Michael Saylor approach where you just sort of acquire more and more and never sell? It's dollar cost averaging. Are you looking to buy, time market cycles? How does that sort of look?
I think my journey has been very similar to most people when they get into crypto. So it's, Bitcoin's too expensive. Let me go into altcoins. So I go and do that, get wrecked. And then you get promised that this is going to 10x and you do that and then you get wrecked as well. And so over time, you realize that there's always number one, which is Bitcoin. And so even today, like I've got a portfolio of altcoins, which I plan to definitely sell in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yep.
But I came to the decision about 6 months ago that I'm just never going to sell my Bitcoin anymore. So the way I go about it is I acquire Bitcoin daily. So just set up an auto invest and just keep buying. Doesn't matter what the price is, because I think if this is to play out even 50% of what people predict it will, it's not going to matter if you pick it up at 90K USD or 150K USD because the price will be much higher. So that's my approach is I allocate daily, whereas I try and do the same thing, dollar cost average into property, but that's more like, I can buy maybe a property every month or every 2 months, which I understand is pretty wild in itself. But with something like Bitcoin, you can do a little bit more, or a little bit less, but every day.
Interesting. So you're more so taking your profits and putting into property rather than the other way around.
Yeah. So profits from altcoins most likely will diversify into some into Bitcoin, some into real estate.
Yeah.
But the real estate portfolio, anything that I make there in terms of equity, just goes back into real estate. And with Bitcoin, there's no selling, so there's no profits. It's just how do I get whatever my paycheck is at the end of the day, decide what I pay myself. I then just put that straight into Bitcoin and just keep acquiring.
Yeah, exactly. And people might think, well, what's the point of never selling your Bitcoin if you can never, enjoy the fruits of the return you get. But I guess like these days, you're getting more sort of utility out of Bitcoin. You can use it to buy stuff online. It's not just, for drugs these days. Like it's a legitimate payment option for a lot of, online vendors. Then again, you can also borrow against it. So like people see Bitcoin as a valuable, stable asset now, and lenders see it as, collateral for lending. So I see that as a really big opportunity as well, and something that I probably look to leverage in the future. It's like, because I'm the same, I don't really want to sell my Bitcoin. Altcoins, yes, I do want to take profits, but Bitcoin's like, okay, I've got X amount in Bitcoin. How do I make the most out of this? You can borrow against it for pretty low interest because, Bitcoin is considered a pretty strong collateral asset. So, do you think it'll ever be the case where you can take out a mortgage in Bitcoin and pay in Bitcoin?
Well, I think, obviously I'm reading a lot more books and just trying to understand the thesis behind Bitcoin specifically. I think we're going to head into a world where in the next 10 years, you're probably getting really attractive rates in terms of lending against your Bitcoin, so borrowing against it. And I think what will probably play out is how do I get the benefit of what I do with real estate is, if I choose to buy a real estate or a property now versus I buy a Bitcoin now, I really can't take much leverage against it without having the volatility in mind.
Yeah.
Whereas if I go into real estate and it grows by say 10% and say it's a 500K property, that's 50K that I can now take out as equity, and then I'm borrowing at rates of 6.5%. I can bring that into Bitcoin and purchase Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'm sort of thinking about it. But I think that is going to flip probably in the next 10 years, where I think the banks are going to be more open to lending against or borrowing against your Bitcoin, and I think the rates will be better against Bitcoin than it would be for your property. So I think then people will do the opposite, which is, now I need to buy my own house. Okay, I might just actually borrow against my Bitcoin, and I'm getting maybe a 3% or 4% interest rate. I can bring that across because if again it comes down to like which is the superior asset. And at this point, it's contentious because, it depends on what lens you look at it. But I think if you look at property, it's got pros and cons.
Yeah.
You can leverage it. You can, get into the market. Historical performance is there, blah, 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 blah. But you've got other issues like that could potentially come up, like, tenancy and, the house gets flooded and things like that happen. Whereas with Bitcoin, you don't have any of that. So I think it will start flipping over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And I can't really relate to the property part nearly as much as you, but in terms of, taking profits from altcoins, like my mindset definitely changed from, okay, I'm using altcoins to, grow my wealth, but now I'm typically selling them into Bitcoin, which of course is growing your wealth. But at the same time, like you said, like I see Bitcoin as probably the most superior asset in my whole balanced portfolio, and I don't ever want to sell it. And like you said, there's probably going to be more opportunities to leverage the Bitcoin in your portfolio. Altcoins maybe not so much, but yeah, I just want to keep acquiring it, and I believe that it will pay off in the future. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Now let's talk market cycles. So obviously, like, probably until this year, everyone was convinced that, Bitcoin followed this 4-year halving cycle. We've had guests on in the past that actually said, it had nothing to do with the halving. It was more to do with the US election. And so now all these other theories are coming out that we didn't hear of really before, but now everyone's saying it. They said it the whole time, which is interesting. Now, I want to ask you, firstly, how do you see the Bitcoin or the crypto market cycle? Has it changed? Because we've sort of veered off from this 4-year cycle in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. Do you think we'll head back to that trend, or do you think we've broken it completely?
I think it's so weird. And I'm glad that I've got the YouTube channel because, we're edging towards 100K, which means, and of that, like 90% of it's Australians, right? So you get a really good idea of when retail is in the market. And every time we've seen tops, within altcoins and things, and you can see, videos from like 2 years ago, 3 years ago that I've made about crypto and now starting to get views. That's generally like within that week, we top out and then we go down. So I haven't seen any of that. And at least for the last like 2-3 months. And it's weird because if you go back 4 years ago in 2021, everyone's like filthy rich, thinking that they can spend all the money in the world and Bitcoin's going to go to 500K. And so it feels very different. But the one thing that I've realized as well is by being in, say, real estate, which is a lot slower in terms of moving in cycles, there's always going to be like positive sentiment where people are going, I'm making so much money. And a lot of people think that's already the case in, say, something like real estate, but it's still got so much further to go. And when you go through a few cycles and you educate yourself as well, it seems like there's a lot more left in the tank. And I sort of see the same thing with where crypto's at the moment. You don't ever have the market crash when 90% of the market's not even there and are depressed about it. It's like you have it when people think they can never lose money. And so I'm yet to see that, even though, you got things happening around the world and Bitcoin's still at that 100K mark. It's the altcoins that have, come off because people don't have as much belief in that at the moment. But I've realized as well, a lot changes so quickly. So could we still see a top in the next 3 months and then go, actually, the 4-year cycle was true and everything just rhymes? I think that's probably going to play out.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm still in the camp that within the next 6 months we're going to see some sort of a top. And then after that we do have a slowdown. But what could change that is obviously interest rates and how they're cutting and liquidity's going up. So maybe it's just sort of positioned it where this should have happened 6 months ago and then we should have had a blow off top like now. But because of interest rates and where they're at, maybe it's just, I guess delayed it. But I'm definitely selling all of my shit when it comes to altcoins in the next 6 to 12 months. I'm definitely out.
Yeah, fair enough. And I guess, I was going to say, I've had a mind blank now. Shit.
We were talking about market cycles.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, like, I guess, because we've traded sideways for a long time, in what people initially thought, this time we're going to be sending it to new all-time highs week after week. Do you think we might expedite like you said that we might have a blow-off top. Do you think because we've had, a long period of trading sideways and not much volatility in the grand scheme, do you think we're going to really send it higher and expedite that, shorter period and do what we should have done, but just in a shorter period of time?
I don't know. And look, I'm no crypto expert and I have no idea where the price will go. But one thing's really interesting in this cycle versus not the last one, the one before it. It was like every time you'd go up, it'd come down 20, 30%. And looking back now, you're like, that was so easy. Like every time it pulled back 20, 30%, just buy and then you'd ride the next wave up and then sell and then 30% down and whatnot. And it feels like the same thing here where it sort of moves sideways for like 2 months and then all the action happens in like 2 weeks. and then it goes sideways again for like the next 2 to 3 months, and it seems to have played out 3 times already.
Yeah.
So I think that to answer your question, do I think these price targets of like 300, 400K are going to happen? I don't think so. I think it's going to be, maybe we top out at 150 if we get there, maybe 180 if it's a good day. But I don't think it's going to be this explosive. We're going to head to 500K, $1 million, because I think time's running out in the cycle for it to be able to be done. That's what I think.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Well, yeah, there are some pretty ambitious targets, I know, for both this cycle, and Kathy Wood's saying $1 million by 2030. I would love to hope that's true, but I guess we'll wait and see. But sorry, back to market cycles. So where do you see sort of the Bitcoin or crypto market cycle, whatever you want to call it? How does that, is there any correlation to, broad economic cycles? You're obviously in real estate, business, equities, like, is there any correlation? Does it fit in with that, or do you see them completely separate?
No, I reckon they all have some similarity. So like if you think about back in 2021, when the market topped out, it's about the same time that we started seeing, okay, all the free money that was going around the system because of the pandemic, now that's starting to get brought back, interest rates start going up. So you can naturally feel like, okay, if interest rates go up or down, that's going to affect, obviously in real estate, it affects how much you can borrow. But it also affects that if you now have an extra $1,000 a month because your mortgage isn't taking as much, that means I'm going to use that money to gamble and do something with. And that's just how people think. They're like, oh, lottery tickets, right? And that's how they think about crypto. And so now with where we're at, obviously in Australia, we've seen a couple of interest rate cuts. We're probably going to see a lot more, in the second half of this year. I think that's going to allow people to go a bit more freely with their money. And obviously Australia is such a small market relative to the rest of the world when it comes to crypto. But I still think that has a major effect because people invest into other things. They're like, oh, well, I can see everyone else making money. Now I've got surplus money. I can't save it because my savings rates are shit. And everyone tells me inflation's eroding my dollar. So I may as well invest it. And I think that's when you start seeing a lot more retail come in, because it's like, I can spend the extra $1,000, but I'm not going to put $1,000 into Bitcoin hoping for a 10%. I need a 10x. And so that's when they start throwing it around, which is why I'm still confident that once we start getting these interest rate cuts, once we see a bit more global liquidity come into the system, I think we have this 4-week mania period, and then call it a day. Yeah,
and let's just hope that Trump doesn't ruin that for us. Or something crazy happens. Anything's possible.
He's gone from like the hero to villain when it comes to crypto, because he's so pro crypto. And I know. Lately, he's made some decisions that have probably caused a bit more volatility.
Yeah. Look, he's an interesting cat, old Trump. Now, I want to touch on altcoins quickly, because you said you obviously got a few altcoins and you're looking to take profits probably before the end of the year, in 6 or so months. What's your approach to altcoins? Can you name any? And do you look at, categories and is that your trading strategy, or is it purely just based on, do you just trade charts?
Yeah. So no idea about charts. I listen to a few people, look at what they say, and then some of them are right, some of them are wrong. So you realize that I'm probably not going to get much out of there.
Yeah.
So with altcoins, I pretty much positioned myself probably late last year. So everything that I wanted to deploy into altcoins was already in. Since then, obviously prices have come up and gone down. But I've had a bag of Ethereum for a while, and then Sui, and then outside of that, there was only one category that I got involved in, which was gaming. Just because that made the most sense to me. I'm not really a smart dude when it comes to this sort of stuff. So I was like, real world assets and like AI and blockchain's gonna do this and that, and I'm like, cool, this makes a bit more sense to me. And I'm only here for a short time, and if I know that, in 2021 when we saw that narrative for the metaverse. Like you saw Sandbox, Decentraland, like all of these go on 5, 10x's like in weeks. And so I think that there's going to be a period there where we see that for AI, it's going to have its time, real world assets, and then gaming, and then you're out.
Yeah.
And I made the mistake last time to go, just spray and pray and just have a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
This time around, it's like 5 things, 5 coins in the same category, hope for the best. And again, I'm not in the camp of I need this to go and do a 10x for me to take my money out. I'm like, give me a 2 to 3x from here, and nice. I'm out, and then I can do whatever else I need. But that's largely because a lot of my portfolio is already in Bitcoin and in real estate. So it's different.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, look, there's always a shiny new category that's popping up, and people tend to chase rather than, stay ahead of the curve, and that's where they can get burnt, whether it be, you mentioned RWAs, AI, DeepIn. But look, I'm sure they will all have their time in the sun. But yeah, look, the gaming one's interesting because it's a very retail-centric category, right? It's, like you said, it's easy to understand. It's more tangible than a lot of these, advanced tech ones that people can pretend to understand, but they really don't a lot of the time.
Yep.
And yeah, gaming is a massive industry, right? Where everyone's waiting on GTA 6, and there's all these memes about how it's taking forever to come out. I'm sure that blockchain and gaming will will continue to evolve. But yeah, I think you're probably right, and that's probably going to happen at the absolute height of the crypto bull market if we see that. So because I don't think meme coins are often the first to run following Bitcoin and maybe layer ones, and then meme coins. Whereas that was previously like the ultimate retail play. Whereas now, yeah, you're probably looking at gaming. What else? Yeah, metaverse. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But no, I like the approach, and I think you're probably sensible in that. In my understanding, it's only a tiny part of your portfolio. The rest is mainly in real estate or Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Do you also have equities and stocks?
No, I sold all of the stock positions I had in late 2019.
Wow.
And it was more so to just go and buy more real estate.
Yeah.
Because I had that, element of leverage that I didn't have with stocks. And I realized I had so much more passion for real estate and I could control it a lot more. So I'm always in the camp of and rather than or. So a lot of people that, come to the channel be like, oh, Bitcoin's the best, or real estate's the best, or actually shares trumps all of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, but as a modern day investor, one plays a big part at different times of your portfolio. So like when you can't borrow at the bank and you're a real estate guy, what do? Do you just save the money? Like, do you pay off your debt? Like, none of those options are actually good. If you're in shares and you want to get a house, like, it's not going to move as fast. You're going to be falling behind because you need to be able to go get a loan for a property that's moving a lot faster because of leverage.
Yeah.
And then Bitcoin, the volatility, a loan for a lot of people is not something they want to, weather. And now speaking about, the strategy, it seems so mature in terms of the way I think about it. But I've definitely got wrecked in the last cycle. Big NFT, like, I'm going to trade NFTs and make a bunch. And
True.
I bought a Bored Ape. I still have it.
Yeah, nice.
I've had to go all the way down. And
how much you buy it for?
I bought it just. I remember buying it for 70 ETH. 70 ETH, and ETH at the time, I think it worked out to be like 250k AUD, which sounds so dumb. Now, fortunately, a week after I got it, they announced the ApeCoin drop, and so I pretty much got 50% back.
Oh, you sold it?
I sold all of ApeCoin that I had at the time.
Yeah, okay.
So, when I look back at that, I'm like, okay, it was all right. And then you got all the other airdrops, like I think there was land deeds and things like that.
Yeah.
But of course, you should have sold it at 150 ETH when it was like peak mania.
Crazy.
And I think now it's like 12 or 13 ETH.
I take it back. NFTs, I forgot about them. They will be the height of the mania probably again. But I'm sure NFTs and gaming will intertwine a little bit more than they have in the past. But mate, that's awesome. I'm sure it'll come in handy at some stage.
I hope so. I mean, it serves as a good Twitter profile at the moment, and I try not to think about it. But to be honest, like, you have to go through those things. And, for me, I'm definitely that type of person, whether it's in business or whether it's in investing, like, you get wrecked for a reason. And if you don't learn from it, that was just really expensive stupidity. Whereas if you can learn from it, you learn some valuable lessons. And I think my journey so far with, losing money on like NFTs and things has just made me realize how important Bitcoin is. And in 5 years from now, I'm not going to care that I lost, 100K or 200K because I ended up making millions because I was positioned the right way. And I feel like if I got involved now, I'd still make those mistakes, whereas I wouldn't be able to capture Bitcoin at the price it's at.
Yeah.
Often the saying is, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. So I feel like, it would have been great if I bought more back then.
Yeah.
But it's not the case.
Hey, you've got a cool Twitter profile. That was the ultimate like clout tool back in the day, in 2021. Like you were a big dog if you had one of those. So
I remember I had it, and then I actually went to the crypto conference in Sydney or something. Oh, actually, it was in Gold Coast, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, the Bored Ape guy," and you feel good for about 10 minutes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then 2 weeks later, you felt like absolute shit.
Yeah, for sure. But we had Greeny, who's like more of a meme coin trader on the show, and he bought a CryptoPunk that, not at the height of the market. I think it was more like, around about now. So I think CryptoPunks have held their value a little bit more than the Bored Apes, but he says like it's, it was an investment for me because of my personal brand, that I'm trying to build out. And it's probably a little bit different to yourself, but whereas because he's, strictly in crypto, but he says, look, if it makes me more legitimate. And because obviously Twitter or X have the verified, NFT profile pictures. I'm assuming do you still have it on there?
I think I still got it. Yeah, I haven't opened up Twitter for a long time.
yeah, fair enough. But no, it's just an interesting perspective. So I'm sure in that case, like there is still value in those types of NFTs, but it'll be interesting to see like where we see the evolution of NFTs this cycle. And it might be in gaming. It might be in ticketing, it might not be in collectibles at all. It might be more like, verifying ownership of something, whether it be a Rolex or legitimacy of something. So
yeah, like outside of real estate and Bitcoin and altcoins, I'm a big Pokemon card collector, right? Cool. And so I invest in Pokemon cards. And, there's a lot of stuff out there where you have grading companies that verify whether the card is real or not and what value it would have based on its quality. And even then, like they're still now falling for fake cards. And so you can see how whether it's AI with deepfake videos and things like that, you need to have something that's going to verify what's actually real and what's not. And that's where I think even for like talking about branding and people and personal brands, it's like that I think is the next big thing, especially when it comes to business, is who do we trust? Because you can get the information from anywhere. You can ChatGPT, it's like, that's the answer. But I want to hear it from your voice because I trust you. So I think the world's going to change in that front as well.
Well, have you heard about WorldCoin?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so WorldCoin created by Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, ChatGPT, everyone knows that. So he started WorldCoin as like a digital identity verification. So it's like you scan your iris in like this orb, which is a physical device, and it verifies you and puts it on the blockchain. So like, because, we're moving to a world where AI is just becoming more and more a part of our lives, obviously, and deepfakes, like you said, like are becoming a big problem. The point of WorldCoin is to verify that you're a real human. And so, it gets around the whole issue of, bots and fakes and AI. So yeah, interesting project. But I know it's run into a few regulatory problems in a lot of countries, like they've been raided and they've been banned. So,
really?
Because I think a lot of people are assuming that for whatever reason that Sam Altman is acting in, he's created a problem and now he's created the solution, and it's just a bit unethical in that sense. But I don't know, it's just interesting to follow these things. I don't think regulation is ever fast enough to keep up like proper regulation. So often people will just have a blanket ban because it scares them, and that's understandable as well. But before we finish up, I want to touch on the buyer's agent stuff, because I know this is a crypto podcast, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners have own real estate or are looking to get into the market, particularly in Australia. Real estate is everything, right? It's in my opinion, it can sometimes be a bit ridiculous, like where like the property market goes. Like we're in Brisbane, right? You're in Sydney. Brisbane in the last 5 years has just gone ballistic, and for a few reasons. We've got the Olympics coming up in 7 odd years. We had COVID, where a lot of people who were locked down and locked away in Melbourne were moving up. Better weather and stuff like that, but what's your approach to sort of different markets in real estate? Like, do you have a spread of property across the country, even across other countries? And what's your what is your approach, and what advice do you give to people entering the market maybe for the first time?
Well, to give some more context to people listening and watching, buyer's agency is called Search Property, and we've got probably about 80 full-time staff now, and we purchase about 1,000 properties a year across all of Australia. So when it comes to like data and, having the right people to be able to go and find new markets, we're probably it, we have so much intel when it comes to that. And so that's just to frame it up where I'm going to answer your question, which is right now we're at a point where a lot of people are priced out of the market. So affordability is the issue. But then you've got, a lot of people, I remember end of 2021, where a lot of people that made money in crypto want to go and park it in something that they know is not going to fall by 50 or 80%, right?
True.
So in that case, it was like, okay, they're going to bring that money across and they bring it into real estate. And so I think the same thing's going to happen, where I've already started having conversations with people going, oh, well, actually, I want to sell a lot of my positions in crypto and bring it into real estate. And when you have that much money that's on sidelines, and then you have incoming schemes by the government, of 5% deposit schemes, and the government really promoting people to go out there and own a property, that all works on the demand side, plus interest rate cuts. But on the supply side, there's just simply not enough homes in Australia.
Yeah.
And so when you have immigration at the levels they're at, there's simply there's no balance there, right? So demand's way too high, and it's going to keep increasing because immigration's just tapering off, but it's still so high, and there's no incoming supply. So if you pick areas that, have that ratio where it works in your favor and there's no incoming supply, but you've got government infrastructure allowing for jobs, it promotes people to come into that area, which is what's happened in, large parts of Queensland. People moved out from, say, Victoria, didn't want to live there, came up to Queensland, there's jobs, there's all of this, but there's no housing. And so I think that if people are in the boat there, it's unaffordable in their local area, they need to start looking nationwide. And that's where, there's been the growth of buyer's agents, because they're for that exact reason.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to be across all of these markets all the time, plus have a full-time job, plus have a life. And so you sort of outsource it just like you would with anything else. And so for us, we've seen so many people that are, young people under 25, and now they're picking up their second property, and, they're picking up good quality homes, but they've never heard of these suburbs before.
Yeah.
And they're relying on the expertise. And when the numbers make sense, you can't lie when it's investing.
Yeah.
When it comes to buying your own home, though, we don't play in that market because I don't know what sort of kitchen you like, and I can't convince you otherwise.
Yeah, fair enough. And what about we were talking about market cycles before. Do you ever see a real estate correction in Australia, and how big is that going to be?
Yeah, so I think I received a lot of attention on the channel when in 2020 I made these whiteboard videos for about 40 minutes. It was a $15 Kmart whiteboard.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And and at that time I had said, look guys, everyone's panicking. You guys should actually be buying up as much real estate as possible, because this is what's happening. This is what's happening in the economy. And so when people started realizing that, it was a bit too late. They got into 21, and then we saw prices go higher. But it was also around that sort of 22 mark where I said interest rates are going higher. We're going to see Melbourne and Sydney pull back. And, areas came down by 7 to 10%. So that was a mini correction. Are we going to see something bigger than that? I think, 10 to 15% is definitely likely. But I think a lot of people are going to think it's happening earlier than it actually is, because they're not on the ground floor. They're not actually involved in it.
Yeah.
It's like someone watching this and going, oh, the 4-year cycle, everything happens exactly the same way, but they're not involved. They don't know the metrics and how much, retail is actually involved. And with real estate, I think people think that might be a correction next year, but with the dynamics that you have in the market, you're probably looking at maybe some sort of pullback by 10 to 15% potentially, maybe 27, 28, 29. But by then, you've got to look at where we've just come from. And I still think that we've got probably double-digit growth for the remainder of 2025 and 2026. And then if you're coming back down by 5 or 10%, you're not going to care.
Yeah, exactly. But on that same theme, do you take the approach of, if you want to get invested in real estate, is it a matter of just getting in when you can, or is it more like you should be timing the market?
No, definitely not timing the market, because, everyone's made that mistake over the last 5 years alone.
Yeah.
It's more so going, do I have the right strategy before I get in? Because buying at any time is the right move to make. It's just, do you have the right strategy? And part of that is, what else do you want in life? Are you going to have kids? Are you going to move out? Are you going to live in this particular area? The other thing is emergency funds. So if something does go wrong, say with a tenant, or there's maintenance issues, or you have life issues, you lose your job, are you going to be able to hold on to that property? I realized very early on that the person that wins in real estate is the one that can hold on for the longest. And so you'll see people always buy and sell. And when you find out reasons why they're selling, it's divorce, or hey, I need to, free up cash flow, or I'm selling all of my investment properties to buy my dream home.
Yeah.
Everyone's got reasons for that. If you can be someone who takes the counter trade and go, okay, I can hold onto this real estate, so when I buy, I'm not selling, you can always borrow against it in terms of equity, and then I can use that to just keep building up my portfolio.
Yeah.
People get scared because they're like, oh, it sounds like you're collateralizing the debt and it's GFC all over again. But you have to do it the right way. And the Australian banking system here is so sophisticated compared to what the American banking system was during the GFC. So it's very different. It's not like for like.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, Ravi, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's been a really interesting mix of insights from crypto to real estate, something we haven't really had before. So I think the audience will love it. But please let us know in the comments. But Mate, obviously you got the buyer's agent, but is there anything, anywhere you want our audience to go? Obviously a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think the YouTube channel is the best. I talk about crypto. I talk about Australian real estate and how you can use both. Take that approach of and rather than or. Stop getting into the comment section saying one is better than the other. You just got to figure out what works for you at based on the life stage you're in. But yeah, personal finance with Ravi Sharma is probably the place to go.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to link it in the show notes. So go check that out. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.